you could get thousands like fast.
I'm trying not to be algorithm driven, but I also know that's part of the game.
100,000 people on their email list. He essentially gets some of those subscribers, and now they're actually paying him to write those articles.
Let's break this down and make this like a brainstorm session of how we could help you. Because I think your content's such good quality and you do such a great job on the deep dives. I'm like, you should have more. You should have more subscribers. More people should see this stuff.
So I'd love both your thoughts on this.
Okay. All right, so we are here at the Kit Studios in Boise with our good friend, Matt Gira. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Excited to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is proud to be the first in-person guest.
Yes, you get to wear that hat, that honor.
I'll get a sticker.
And we're all here because Craft and Commerce, right?
Yep.
Matt, you've been to Craft and Commerce before?
This is my fourth time at Craft and Commerce.
Wow, you have me beat. I've only been 3.
And I'm a Craft and Commerce virgin, so this is my coming out party, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah. Matt, you've got a newsletter, you create awesome content. We thought this would be fun to kind of talk through what you do, and you share us kind of your story of how you got to where you are and what you create. So why don't you give us like a quickish rundown of what you write and maybe why you started it.
Yeah. So I write a newsletter and podcast about how bootstrap companies go from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. It's really been a kind of a journey of like, originally when I first started entrepreneurship, it was like bootstrap companies are like cute little main street, like why do they exist kind of deal. I was very much on like the tech track and ran a company called Fathom. We made underwater drones. Did the whole tech journey, raised money, went through Techstars, like pitched Damon John from Shark Tank. Like I've lived it. And then I was like, why did we just do all of this? And like all the work that I was doing, like raising money, I'm like, this is silly. And so then like we shut that down about 6 years ago now. But then it's been like, okay, like what types of businesses are actually like beneficial to the world? Like, I don't think we need another unicorn, which that might be a hot take. And so like, that's where I was like, and then I came to Craft and Commerce 4 years ago and I was like, how do we build more kits? Cause like fully bootstrapped, like the team wasn't stressed. I'm like, you're like a startup, but not, and you're not like, you're like a healthy stressed. And I was like, I was always like stressed out of my mind. And so like, that's where like a lot of this came about. In the last like 3 years, like I was like doing no code tools for a little bit, but then someone here at Craft and Commerce 3 years ago was like, do you really want to work with people who don't know how to use a PDF or like open a PDF?
Right.
And I was like, absolutely not. Like, that's my mother. I don't want to know.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. I love you, but
don't want to like, I don't want to be the geek squad of all this stuff. So it just kind of transformed. And then last year I was here and I was like, I want to do like bootstrapped, which I was like hesitant to be like, oh, this is the place I didn't want to be. At least that's what I originally thought. But then like seeing Kit, seeing other people do like what you've been doing and all that stuff. And I was like, no, like let's go into like some bootstrapped companies that this is actually maybe the future. And then saw Carta's data too about like how bootstrapping is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and then the AI, like people being like code whatever they want. So like that's where I think a lot of the places given to play. And the more I get into doing deep dives on how these companies build, like the more I'm like convinced like this is the way it should be.
That's awesome. So underwater drones.
Yeah.
VC funded.
Yeah.
Kind of VC funded.
Depends
how you look at it.
Okay. Funded. Okay.
We were funded by Techstars, which I guess is a VC, but like I consider them more of like an angel investor. But anyways, that's semantics. So yeah, we made underwater drones. We are known like we just like basically the infamous like right drones at the time was 2015. Like so they were just kind of coming online and like they were the big thing. And then I was living with a couple guys and they're like, okay, like what if we instead of it in the air, like could you go underwater? Because it was like I'm originally from Michigan, so the whole thing was like, oh, like could we go explore like the Great Lakes or like all the little lakes in Michigan, which like probably have tons of like little secrets and histories and shipwrecks, all that kind of stuff. And we're like, yeah, let's see what happens because no one else was really in the market. And then we were dumb enough. Like this is like the dumbest startup if you really look at it. Like bunch of college students, hardware and consumer product, and no recurring revenue. Like we are the epitome of like the worst startup idea you've ever heard. And we actually like got pretty far for what we did.
Wow.
So we did like huge Kickstarter campaign and like actually shipped 600 units.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah.
So I mean, that feels exciting and like a bit of a success. So what happened?
Basically, so like we got to the end of 2018 and we had just shipped and we were running out of money. But I was like to our investors, like I did like a monthly investor update. We're going to take whatever funds we have left, all the resources we have. And it was like October. And I was like, we are going to like just spend it all, because if we can't sell during the holidays, like what are we doing? Mm-hmm. And we did okay. It wasn't like super thrilled, but it wasn't like super awful. But then almost every single unit was coming back for different reasons, for technical reasons. Like, oh, this one leaked. This one's got a bad whatever. Like, it was like, wasn't on the manufacturer or anything like that. It was totally on us of like this bad design, because it's like, again, college students building.
And were you guys like engineers?
Most of the team was. I have a degree in chemistry, so like I know, and I've taken enough engineering courses to be dangerous.
Okay.
But like if you asked me to build that drone, probably not.
And did you build that drone?
I did not.
Okay.
It was other people doing it.
Okay.
I was on the business side of things and like learning all this stuff about like, oh, you have to do this with investors. Oh, you should actually build relationships first. Like,
And now you're working with Yale too, and you have been for a while.
yeah. So ended up, shut down the startup, like did like a free agency year is what I call it right after that. It was like consulting and on the side. Found myself back at Yale because I interned there to go through like their summer program at the time in 2015. And then it's like morphed into like, yeah, now I lead student entrepreneurship at Yale, essentially. And it's like a wild ride to see like be the person that's like making sure the food arrived at this program. And now it's like, oh, you lead the whole thing.
That's really cool.
That is cool. So now you are diving into how other bootstrappers are getting to that first 250K in revenue. So one of the first things I think of is why 250K? 250K.
So it's really a big moment, I think. So one was like when I looked at all the research around like, okay, we're like Kit has their creator like report they do every year, and they mark 250K as like this big number. And then if you look at other like industry reports, like 250 is always like a number. And I was like, why? Then I started talking to founders and like started talking here at Craft and Commerce, and it was like, oh no, like that's when things change. And I was like, why do things change? And one is because like your growth is different usually at 250. One is like your growth strategy, like the way you can grow is way different, right? Because you're not like scrapping and clawing. Like has to be systems to get to 250. And then two is like you usually can't do it on your own at 250. Like sometimes these days maybe it's more acceptable, but like it's pretty rare when you can do it as a solo at 250 and above. So you, like team building is becoming a thing. Like it just all the numbers change, or things like the systems and like how you operate changes at 250 for most. So that's why we're at 250.
Very cool.
When did you start this whole newsletter and podcast, right?
Yeah, this was July of last year when I like did the first like kind of pilot, like let's see what happens.
Okay.
And I did it on Nathan, but not his Kit story, because I was like, I want to interview Nathan to get that one.
Yeah.
But like totally like nerded out in Nathan, like so hard, like kind of like you do. And I was like, I feel like I can like hear Nathan in my head at this point. And yeah, it like got really good reception from like people. Like I was like, as texting people, I'm like, what do you think of this? And yeah, like now it's just like lots of good feedback, and it just his kind of snowballs from there.
Very cool. So less than a year in.
Yeah.
What are we, 11 months?
Something like that.
Yeah, about that.
And how many subscribers are you at? What are you?
Yeah.
You've had some changes happen recently too.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. As of 36 hours ago, the website's finally updated.
Yay.
Okay.
Awesome.
So talk us through what you originally launched it as, like name-wise and brand-wise, and where it's at now.
So the whole brand has been like called Station, because I've always thought about it as like a train station. Like I could build a lot of hubs, and like there's a lot of like different brand plays off that, I think. But that doesn't really accurately say like what this is for. And so lastly 3 months, I was like, I got to rebrand, at least like create a brand underneath that. And I was like, what? Like we've been talking, and then you said the quarter, and I was like, darn it, that's it. And then like I started passing that around. They're like, yeah, that's it. Like it's simple and it's like super catchy. Like it just got a lot of things. And then the logo thing was like so easy, because it was like, oh, just a pie chart and like a quarter.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's all played out nice. And now if you go to jointhequarter.com, it's all there.
Amazing.
36 hours ago.
36 hours. It's exciting. Okay, so now walk us through, you've been doing this for 11 months. Maybe talk to us a bit about your content, because you take a really in-depth approach both in the written component, but you also go a layer up with the podcast. So what does like your typical deep dive kind of look like?
Yeah, so typically it is the normal structure of it is doing like the story of like the founder, so you have some context. It's also like you get little tidbits of like, oh, didn't even know. Like there's been people I'm friends with you for the last like decade. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
And so getting that story. And then also I think there's so many unique tidbits I think that you pick up. So usually I try to do like their story and like one like kind of thing that's really unique to them. So like there's one that's coming out of like finally someone was talking about Blue Ocean strategy. So like we'll talk about a little bit about that too. So like there's just like some concepts I'll kind of bake into them. And then the last half of it is the growth strategies. Like how do they actually do it? Because like as you've probably seen, like no one wants to like, I don't think it's intentional. They just don't really talk about like, here's how I did it or how I actually grew it, especially for bootstrap people, because they're just like, oh, no one cares about my story. Or like no one actually, like press isn't necessarily reaching out to them. They're reaching out like, if you're backed, then you can talk about it. And it's like, well, that's like 0.1% of all companies. So like me coming, like I might be one of the first people that have actually asked like, okay, how did you actually grow this? And you just get like this huge list of stuff, or if it's like really simple and you're like, that's the whole thing. They're like, yeah. So that's been like so showing like growth strategies so that way people can go implement them on their own too.
Okay. And you are not, because with Chenell's newsletter, she is doing a lot of just like total secondary research. Like she's going through podcast episodes, articles they've written, anything she can dig up on the Wayback Machine, right?
Yeah.
But you've taken more of a primary research approach where you're actually like interviewing these people, right?
Yeah. So I'll do a little bit, but not to the extent you do. And so like I'll research, I'll do the Wayback Machine, but like there's only so much you can get, I think, from a lot of these founders. Yep. So like if I'm in person, like I now have like a mobile studio in my backpack.
Amazing.
And so I can go record with people in person. And I'll do a little bit of it, especially if they're like a creator, which is like a really cool studio. I'll be like, we're recording virtually. I want to see your studio in all of this.
Nice.
So like that's been super cool. So yeah, I'll interview with them and just kind of like, it's me like putting some of the pieces together, because sometimes there's like, oh, like I have this piece, but like how does this connect to such and such?
Yeah.
And there's some stuff I'm like, okay, I would have never found that. So that's been super cool. And like there's definitely some bias. I know like you've been like, oh, I don't want to talk to people because of the bias piece, because they're like they have survivor's bias or all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's some of that I have to like, okay, there's like I need to weed some of that out. But like yeah, that's me doing the interviews has been super cool. And being in spaces, I'm like, I never would have been in here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that they're sharing your piece of content after you write it or after you publish it?
Yeah, a lot of them will. But it's been interesting because a lot of them will post them on their personal channels rather than their business ones. And it's interesting because like they're like, here's my story, because a lot of their friends and family might not know their story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's been curious to see some of that. The interesting piece too is like not all of them have like the newsletters and things like that. A lot of them have like maybe a YouTube channel, or maybe they don't even have a social media presence. So like they will share it, but like it's been hit or miss of like actually if it's been helpful or not.
Very cool. How many subscribers are you at today?
I'm at 1,200.
1,200. Okay. So small but mighty.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah.
And I think you started this as a YouTube channel first, right?
Yeah, it was more of like a YouTube channel. I wasn't going to be a podcast. And then I asked everyone, including the newsletter, like I was like, all right, is this a podcast? Just like really silly question.
Yeah.
And I thought people would be like very mixed debate. It was like clearly a podcast. Like no one put no.
That was like, in the community when you asked that?
Or just the newsletter? I put it on LinkedIn and on my newsletter, and everyone put yes. And I was like, oh, I need to go get this a podcast feed.
So how does it change your approach? Because when you talked about YouTube and you talk about podcasts, and some people might be like, wasn't that the same thing? So how does that change your approach when you're doing the interviews and stuff?
Yeah, so because I've always seen it as like more of like a TV show type thing.
Okay, yeah.
Like on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I guess like podcasting is transferring to that a little bit. Because I'll do more like there's slides, there's me drawing in some of them. Like there's a lot of like the visual components to this. I try to show like the websites or like the B-roll, all that kind of stuff, which you don't see in the podcast stuff. But I guess you do get majority of the content through just like listening to it. So I get why people think it's a podcast and like why that's a valuable thing. But definitely the best experience is through YouTube.
Yeah.
By far.
So do you take just the audio basically of the YouTube video and turn that into, okay. So you're not doing a whole other take and no. I guess this is a side project for you, so it's not exactly like you can spend every waking hour on it.
And so like there's been like small little tweaks. I'll be like subscribe at the end of the video, whatever. I'll be like subscribe at the end of the episode, and like these little things.
Interesting. So are you monetizing this, or do you plan to? And if so, how?
Oh, that's the $1 million question.
Well, it could be. It could be the $1 million question.
Yeah. So right now it is not monetized.
Okay.
I just have like affiliate links, which like pay for the software, interestingly enough.
Nice.
But yeah, ultimately I like the vision is like to build like an incubator program so we can build from 0 to 250. And so what that looks like TBD, but that's ultimately like, how do we help people go from 0 to 250 and build a really cool business? And if they're going beyond 250, that's even better.
So when you think about the people you want to feature, are you, obviously they've hit 250.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about like software or media, or like what kind of businesses are these?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. That's at least what I'm trying to do. It's so easy just like grab creators.
Yeah.
Because they're just like here.
Yeah.
And like those are friends and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like it's been so interesting because like a friend of mine does the last deep dive I just did is like silk screen marketing, and they like screen print t-shirts and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I didn't know this is like such a like robust system. And like you could make 250K off this. So there's some of that. The retail stuff has been super interesting because like I feel like they get to 250 so fast, but their profitability is a lot different.
Right. So we're talking overall revenue when we're talking 250.
Yeah. So I don't even like ask for profit because it's like
It's touchy.
It's a touchy and like all these different things. But like it's been interesting to see like I did one on a company that does like, it's kind of like something like paint and sip. It's like candle making and sip. So that was like super interesting to see like, okay, like you're in a mall, like malls are supposedly dying, but like here you are like killing it. And then I did one, it's like actually they shut down. And so like talking about that story too.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, there's like creators too, like Chris and Sarah, they're like a travel vloggers. Like, how do you make money traveling? And those kind of things.
I think what I find really alluring to your content is it's not just always the exact same kind of persona in the story. It's you're mixing up from people who are like traveling the world in an RV and making money somehow doing that as creators to people who are doing silkscreen printing and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of it's a nice angle, and it's kind of a refreshing approach. It's not just always kind of the same sort of cookie cutter story.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about like, okay, like location wise, right? Like I'm in mostly the Midwest and the East Coast, but like what's the West Coast look like, right? Like,
right.
So I'm trying to put like I'm thinking more about it as like a data set in a lot of ways, or like a library.
Oh, okay.
And then that, like I have like a better picture, because the other thing I've realized is like this is building a really unique data set that like no one really has. Like the growth strategies, like how, like where they, like I have all this different stuff, and like that's the piece that's been even more interesting to me.
So have you found it hard to grow the newsletter and YouTube channel because it's so diverse and there's not like a set person that's like perfect for this content?
I think there's some of that for sure.
Okay.
I think the other thing is like there's just like all the, I don't know if stigma is the right word, about bootstrapping. Like my original like thesis about bootstrapping is like a lot of people's like mindset of like, oh, it's like, it's cute, it's not really worth it. There's like a lot of like economic development, like if you like the other like entrepreneurial support organizations, right, they'll be like, oh, you're just moving money around is what their theory is a lot, which is like not true. I have like a lot of like stories I can show, like here's how this is actually building your community and ecosystem, innovation ecosystem. So like there's just been interesting like conversations around that, and people not taking it as seriously, I think, as a pathway. But it's interesting is like people who have built a venture-backed company and like maybe they shut it down, all these kind of things, like they've been like, oh, I get it. And so that's been interesting to hear some of that feedback too.
So how do you plan to grow this from here?
So that's been like the now that like I have like kind of like, okay, here's I think what good content, and the brand is like in a decent, like I can pitch this in a decent spot. I think the growth strategy is like want to get on different podcasts like this one. Two,
Check.
I got one.
Yeah.
But then two, I think is like keep doing YouTube, do LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I have like that's my biggest following in some ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Which isn't huge. It's only like 4,500 people, but I get decent engagement. So I think just like really leaning into that, even though like I have mixed feelings about LinkedIn.
Don't we all?
Yeah, don't we all? So I think it's just kind of leading into some of this. And then what I'm also realizing is like the data I'm getting is also like a pathway for myself. One of the things I've really learned is if you're building with others, you move so much faster to 250K. So like what the data I have is like, to get to 250K, the average time to get there from 0 to 250 is about 2.5 years. But if you're building in a community with others, it's almost a year shorter.
And that's just like having people around you that are doing something similar, or is that like co-founders?
It's like building around you. So like it might be like you're in paid communities, or like you're working with like other platforms like Hacker News, or like, yeah. So like, as long as you're like in a community and there's others working with you and stuff, that might be like sharing your content too. Like that's when you like speed up like crazy.
So like collaborations and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So maybe before we figure out how you're going to grow this further, how have you gotten to the 1,200 subscribers? Like what have been your biggest growth channels?
So one was most recently is the Bootstrap report.
Okay.
So I did like kind of took like the first like 50 or so businesses that I've done research on, put them in like the data set, like very like here's what they are, and like the growth strategies, like the most used and all those kind of things. That's given me about 150 subscribers in the last like few months.
Okay.
And that was like posted on like Indie Hackers. It was the top hit for Indie Hackers for a little bit. So that drove a good amount, and then just being shared out too. There's definitely some word of mouth elements. I can't figure out where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces like Creator Network with Kit. There's been some other creators who are like, hey, I'll just like recommend you, and they've sent me probably like a third of that list.
Okay.
And then the rest is just YouTube, because I was doing like Airtable content and Notion content and like your typical like tools and things like that. With like, here's a template, here's like this, like all that kind of thing. So that's probably where the like 500 of the list or so.
From YouTube. Do you do call to action to get your bootstrap report in there?
Yeah.
Or?
So now the bootstrap report's everywhere. Like it should be hard to miss.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's like everywhere. So it's in all the blog posts now. It's on the YouTube channel. It's in LinkedIn like crazy. So like ultimately, like I'm trying to drive everything through that, because I think that's the best resource. Like in terms of like, okay, here's what. Because if you like the Bootstrap report, you're gonna like the content. And so, but if I did like other lead magnets, I don't think you might stick around. Like the people that are like signing up for like, oh, here's a free financial model. Like you probably don't care about the deep dives, because that's not what you didn't come in through that.
Okay. So plans for growth. What's worked is YouTube and Bootstrap report. We could probably put those at number 1, 2. Yeah. So what is the next, if you had to plan out like the next 6 months ish of growth strategies, what would you, or do you, let's break this down and make this like a brainstorm session of how we could help you. Cause I think part of the reason I told Chenell, I'm like, I think we should have Matt on. Yeah. And she's like, I agree. And because I think your content's such good quality and you do such a great job on the deep dives, I'm like, you should have more. You should have more subscribers. More people should see this stuff. This content is really good, and you put so much effort into it. It's not just something somebody's doing like, for an hour a week kind of thing. It's, you put a lot of time into it. So I want more people to see it. So let's like get it in front of more people. How can we do that? What's your plan for that?
So I'd love both your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Like that's part of like the question like this month is like how to do that. And like, so collabs has been on my mind. I've been doing a little bit. Actually today on LinkedIn, I was like, let me see if I can I package these other people's stuff? Does that send stuff? So kind of experiment with that. Everyone seems to be like, Matt, you need to go on a podcast. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So, and then like YouTube is just such a commitment. I feel like that's like the hardest platform to really do it at like a really elite level. But yeah, I'm trying not to be algorithm like driven, but I also know that's part of the game.
Well, YouTube also is evergreen, which is nice in a sense of like, yes, it's harder, but it lasts way longer than a LinkedIn post or anything. So, and I feel like when I first saw your content start to like the new stuff 11 months ago, I was like, his YouTube channel is really good, because it's just, you spend the time to make it good and like a good quality. And I'm all about that kind of insanely valuable content. So I do like that you're doing YouTube. I'm sure it's really hard though. Have you thought about like, not that I'm suggesting this, but paid ads at all?
It has been on my mind. I think it's been like, okay, what does that look like? And then what's the flywheel if there's no revenue coming in? So I think that's the piece like, all right, do we do like the incubator now? So like that becomes more of an option too.
Are you ready to start the incubator?
I don't know. I want to. I really do. I think I might be ready.
Have you been part of one before?
Yeah. I mean, I've been part of a bunch of incubators.
Okay, so you know how they operate.
Yeah,
and how to
I've
run
been
one,
leading
probably.
them for like a decade now. Right?
Dude, you're ready. You're ready.
Yeah. Like there's a really good friend of mine. He's like, Matt, you're just a walking Rolodex. Because I'll just be like, oh, you should meet so and so.
Yeah.
So like that part of it just comes natural to me. I think it's more just like, okay, who's actually paying for this? Like who are like the first 10 or so people, and then going from there and like really be like doing the initial pilot seems to be like the snowball effect. But that's the hardest lift, it feels like.
0 to 1.
Yeah.
And you're probably gonna have to take a little bit of a break from content to start that, maybe.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or like get so far ahead in content.
Do you think there's a world where you would do like services of like helping someone who's trying to get off the ground and like just give them part of your Rolodex maybe?
I've thought about that too. I think it's been like, okay, what does that actually look like? It's just like productized services is also a thing I've learned. It's like where everyone's like does really well. So it's like, yeah, what does that look like? But maybe that's like one of the tiers of the incubator too, where it's like more like one-on-one support too.
Yep. So what you could do, just going back to the paid ads idea, the Bootstrap report feels like a really good lead in, right? So advertising that, and then in the back end, the flywheel, so to speak, that Shane talked to us about this morning, you can just have start pitching this incubator, because the people who are going to be interested in a Bootstrap report are probably going to be at least interested in an incubator of some sort.
Here's my other thought. So Dan Runcie does the Business of Hip Hop.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a report, which is free, but then there's also a higher tier for industry professionals. I have to wonder if other VCs or investors are interested in the content you're creating and like the data set that you have. I almost wonder if there's a way to create a free version. Like maybe you update it soon. I think you just released it a couple months ago, but maybe the next time you update it, you could do that, or get some sponsors for the report. And then maybe there's a way you could do like a hybrid model for sponsorships. Like here's the base package to get you in the deck or the PDF or whatever you're selling it as. And then as we add, 100 more subscribers or 1,500 more subscribers, they like start. I don't know how that would work, but
Yeah.
I'm just riffing here.
No, I know like Richard Vanderboom from he does the LinkedIn one.
Guy, yeah.
He's been interesting because I'm like, I don't have the data set you have, but like that's where I feel like I'm trending in terms of the data. So yeah, what does that look like? And so I'm kind of like, I've been like, anytime like someone does a report or like does anything like community wise and like building in public, I'm like, oh, safe.
Yeah.
What is your biggest challenge you're facing like right now?
I think just like growing the newsletter. I think it's like the growth side. Like, what's the system that like really grows this consistently?
Okay.
LinkedIn, like I feel like I can get lots of decent amount of eyeballs on stuff, but like, does that translate to newsletter growth?
Yeah. Would you say that? I mean, LinkedIn is a professional network, so you'd think somebody who's trying to bootstrap a business would probably be there to some degree. But have you found that to be the case?
Yeah. So there's a lot of like, LinkedIn's known for the lurkers, and so I have a lot of that. Because when I come in, like I'll be in person and stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, I saw that content." I'm like, "I didn't even know you existed."
Yeah, right.
Or like I didn't know you were watching.
Never even hit like before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that, and like they're not on the newsletter. They're not. So that's why I'm like, I can't abandon LinkedIn completely, because it is hitting the right people a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So in terms of collaborations, because you did touch briefly on that, podcast is one way to do it. We've done some cross promos together. What is another? Is there more of a meat on that bone that you could chew on?
So the one, like I do most of my a lot of what I know is like in person.
Yeah.
So it's been like, okay, like is there a way to do events? Is there a way to partner with other organizations, especially to put on events? Especially with like the local like entrepreneurial support organizations. They're always like looking for people to do events with. I think it, like that's a different time commitment, but you also get like a deeper level of subscribers. So it's like, it's the ROI piece of it, of like the quality versus quantity thing. And like, is the ratio right, I guess.
You were looking at doing a tour this spring, right? Walk us through that idea, because I thought it was a really cool idea. And you told us about it a few months ago, and then it kind of fell off. But just walk us through that idea, because I think that's like a form of collaboration. It's like a form of a bunch of things, like collaboration in events, in person. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I think maybe next year you might be able to take that one off the ground. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, so the whole idea for the tour was, okay, if I can go tour around the country, like go to these different cities, go to the different co-working spaces, incubators, those kind of things. Go interview people that have done 250K in person, those kind of things. Like maybe have a full backlog for the year on content. Don't have to record the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So that was one angle of it. Two was like, yeah, if I could essentially do the interviews like in person, maybe in front of like some of them, do them in front of an audience, right? Do like a fireside chat, do the first part of it as like the content for YouTube. Because what I don't do it like straight, because not every founder is great at interviews. So I'll like interview them and then I'll cut it up and like then like piece it all together. So if I took like the 20 minutes of that fireside chat to get, okay, here's what I need, and the rest could be just like more open Q&A, that seems to be like a really good fireside chat, I think. And you'd get like, if you know the newsletter, which isn't a ton of people obviously, but like, if you know that like you're gonna see the format and like be able to do all that. So like that felt like, okay, that could be really catalytic in terms of like getting in front of people, all that kind of stuff. And if I can get content recorded for like a year, that would be incredible.
That's almost the value to you selfishly. Like, yeah.
And also just like get out and like go hear from people.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the piece that's like most helpful or all those kind of things. And also, right, if you're building community, right, like being in person with people is like so much better than digitally.
I'm curious if you've thought about, I don't, this is always on my mind lately, but CJ Gustafson of Mostly Metrics, he does like sponsored posts with brands. So he will go to a brand and say like, hey, let me write an article for your newsletter. They have 100,000 people on their email list. He essentially gets some of those subscribers, and now they're actually paying him to write those articles. And now, I mean, he doesn't even have to create net new content. Like they're just sharing his stuff. I'm curious if there's a way that you could take something from that and maybe go out to software companies or startup like that cater to these founders and say like, hey, let me like write something for you. And like, those are your people on their audience. I have to wonder if there's something there.
Totally. Because I'm doing like one pilot. So basically there's a group called Midwest House in the Midwest. They're like this, they cover the Midwest obviously, but it's like all the Midwest startups, and like they do a big event. I think their biggest event is it's at South by Southwest, and they get like 3,000 people within like 3 days. But they do a newsletter on Substack, and they were like, "Oh, what if you just like posted one of your deep dives in our newsletter? Like you'll own the newsletter for once a month." That's interesting, and so like we're kind of piloting that to see how that goes.
Okay.
But yeah, like the other thought has been like as a productized service has been like, okay, what if I did like the deep dives on other centers and other like for companies and things like that, and then if I could get the rights to that data, that gives me a whole new data set too that I can keep building off of. Because the one thing I don't have right now, which I'd love to have, is like the venture backed data of like, can I do apples, like compare them and be like, are they different? How are they different? And that like, I don't really want to do the content on them necessarily. Yeah. But I want the data. Yeah. So that's a piece of like, what does that look like? But also like, right, these reports, I feel like are a really good lead magnet for so many people, especially with these B2B businesses. So like, I'm really comfortable with them. They're really fun to do, even if they're not necessarily like my, like the bootstrap people. Like if they're about the companies and I can like do that, I think that'd be sweet.
That would be super interesting. Because I feel like that's just a way to get in front of such a big audience quickly. And like, you're not doing cross promos and getting like 20 subscribers here, maybe 50 there. Yeah. It's like you could get thousands like fast.
Yeah. And I think there's just like, okay, who are those groups that like need that data? And like, how much time and effort does it take to go get those reports done?
You could also create like pitch one of these companies, go to them and say like, hey, I have all this data. I want to write a report for you on like the top 10 ways these bootstrap founders are growing, something that would help their readers and they would kind of see value from. And then you don't have to worry too much about the data right away. And it's still coming from your data set. Yeah. And then you can kind of like pitch the bootstrap founder report as like a lead magnet.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff like chambers of commerce are interesting to me. I don't know a ton. They're kind of outside my normal world in some ways. So it's like, is there a play with them too? Because they have these huge amounts of communities and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there a way because a lot of the times like a lot of these organizations, right, they're like, how do we show that like we're actually valuable? Because like the data is hard for them to get. So if there's a way like that I could do that for them, I think that's a big value too for them. But then it's like, is that distraction? I don't know.
How do you think about other colleges and universities in terms of growth? Because I don't know why it just occurred to me now, like a bootstrap founder is probably like a third, fourth year student potentially, right? So have you gone down that rabbit hole at all?
Yeah,
because you work at a university.
Yeah, I do feel like I have a lot of hot takes about universities.
Oh, okay.
I think the bootstrap founders, I think they're like it's just we don't talk about it enough at the university level. It's like because all the VCs and everyone just like clamoring for like the venture backed companies all the time. There's a value to that because I think there's like excitement and like that like, oh, I can go build the next pick a company, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's like it's a nice little carrot, but then like they are like right like I was like we're the worst nightmare for a VC. So it's like, okay, we're dangling them and like expecting them to do that, but then they're measuring it off of like how much money they've raised. So like they might go raise money like kind of we were like go raise a bunch of money and like we're like a cool story for like a year, but when we flame out, we just like disappear and then you move on to the next. And that's not like a good ecosystem builder. And so like that's where it's like, how do we support the ones that are actually going to build something that lasts for longer? And so like I think about that quite a bit So the other thing I've learned with the Bootstrap report, particularly, like one of the things I've measured was years of experience.
Okay.
And what I learned was like it's about 8.5 years of experience typically when they start their like the business that gets them to 250, which is about 32, which is about where I'm at, age 32. And so it's like, which makes sense based on like my own optics. I think it made sense because like, oh yeah, like you start your first venture, go work, go make a little bit of money, you get sick of that, and then you go move to your like go build a venture. So like that all like put together like made sense to me. So I think it's the group that's after they leave university.
Okay.
Like, I think, but like, how do you do that? I don't know yet.
So your target newsletter audience would not necessarily be university students.
Not necessarily yet. I think some of them will be like, I keep saying like, there's going to be a university that figures out like, hey, bootstrap companies are like a focus. And I think it's going to be someone that doesn't have a big VC space or a big VC network around it. And they're going to absolutely crush because like, you don't have to worry about the VCs necessarily. You can like, you have to pitch differently. The communication is going to be a lot different. But like you could build a really, really cool local ecosystem just with doing the focus on that.
I feel like the brand angle is great. I think the tour is going to be amazing if you do still want to do that. I think it's just like, I remember a friend of mine did it, I don't know, 2016 or something. And he went to all the credit unions in the US. It was more about like personal finance and stuff. But I think there's an angle there where it's just like compound and you build like every stop that you're at. It's like people talk about it more. There's more like PR and like images online. And it's like creating a sense of FOMO.
Totally. Right. And then like, yeah, the PR angle, right? Like it's such an easy, especially if there's founders like I just did, I haven't published it yet, but there's a deep dive. It's an agency that runs, they do $30 million in revenue. They're fully bootstrapped. He's never asked to be on a fireside chat, which blows my mind.
Wow.
Like blows my mind that no one knows that like they're like, oh yeah, like we know them, but like, they don't understand like what they've built and on what size it's at.
Like the impressiveness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he should be on a fireside chat like monthly in this community. Like there's not many of him. And he's available. Like that's the crazy, like.
And you interviewed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's been a mentor of mine for a long time. And I was like, he doesn't talk, like he doesn't do any events.
Yeah.
And I'm like people might know who he is, but like he's not this big thing. But if he was like venture backed, he would be talked about all the time.
Right. Because that's sort of the sexy headline, right? They raised $50 million from A16Z or whoever.
I think it's more sexy to have that headline.
I agree. I agree.
This guy built this business by himself and like figured it out. And now he's sitting on this like $30 million project.
Yeah. And like, just, they do incredible work, like crazy. I feel like every time I talk to him, there's like crazy stories in such a good way. And I'm like, how are you not in front of a mic all the time? But
Do these people all hang out in like a specific community together? Is there like
not
anything
really. They like, maybe they'll go to chamber events kind of here and there.
BNI type things? Is that even a thing for those folks?
Yeah. Like they're doing like, they'll do a little bit, but a lot of times they're kind of solo or like their network is outside of their local region too. I've learned like, they met him, like there's this conference they go to and that's where they just like hang out. So it's just like, it's just pockets everywhere. Or like, there's like another group, which like now I've featured like 3 or 4 of them, together. But basically like, there's like these networking groups that like people sign up for and they just like keep building relationships. Like there's this full network of people, like of deep dives, like there's Brandy Bernowski and then like Aaron Rolandhagen and Eduardo Place, like they were all connected. They're not even in the same vicinity. Like Aaron's in Iowa City of all places. Brandy's in New York, New Jersey, New York. And then Eduardo's in New York, but like they're all just like super connected and like that they're just talking all the time.
I wonder if you can go to these conferences and just like hand out like stickers or something.
Like stickers or like me just like sitting in front of like a bench with studio and like, hey, anyone want to sit and talk with me?
Yeah.
Holding your funky, expensive camera mic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get like the Justin Moore backpack that lights up.
Yeah,
and you can have it say like, are you a Bootstrap founder? Come talk to me.
Keep the t-shirt,
Yeah.
like, banner. Yeah.
Dress up like a banana or something.
Yes.
A quarter. You could dress up like a quarter.
Oh, wow.
Or have somebody else dress up like a quarter.
Dress up on like, I forget, I don't know. I don't even know what president's on the quarter. But like dress up as that person.
I'm Canadian, so I have no idea what president's on the quarter.
Yeah.
I know there's a moose on our quarter, or an elk. Jeez, I'm going to get canceled by Canadians. There's an elk on our quarter. That's it.
We're going to get canceled by Americans. We don't even know what's on the quarter. This is your brand now. You have to know what's on the quarter.
I'll look that up when I get back.
Oh, amazing.
Any parting thoughts or words? Like, I think anybody listening might be like, well, I don't even have 1,200 subscribers, or and I'm struggling. Like, do you have any words of advice? You might feel like I only have 1,200 subscribers, but there was a point in time 11 months ago where you had 0. Yeah. What's the Matt's word of wisdom for the day?
I feel like everything I've learned is just like stick with it, and like is if you feel like you're providing value for people, that it's gonna hit eventually.
Yeah.
It hits faster than for others. Like everyone's on a different timeline. So like in my head, it's been like it's hard to do it, like compete against yourself versus like someone else.
Yeah.
And which is hard. It's also hard, like especially doing these deep dives. I'm like, oh, they grew so fast, or like. But then you hear people be like, oh yeah, it took 7 years, or whatever it is. Like, so it just like do good stuff, and I think consistently growing that mentality. I think that's where it matters.
Your story kind of reminds me of that Jack Butcher diagram where it's like, consistent small line, small line, small line, small line, and then all of a sudden, boom.
And then it says like this is pointless at the bottom.
Exactly.
You think it's like
you
right
give up
before you give. Yeah, right before you give up, it's like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden it's like explosion.
And there you can feel when there's like a little bit of momentum building. But when you're getting the signal, I guess, that like crickets, nobody's watching or listening, then maybe it's time. You don't want to do the same thing over and over for years. But my point is like you're getting a bit of momentum and you're getting that growth, maybe not as fast as you want. But I mean, we see the quality of content you're putting out there and work you do. So I think it's just a matter of time if you stick with it.
Appreciate that.
And I think you have the experience, the knowledge, and like it's going to happen. Yeah. It's inevitable. It's just like patience.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
I know. I'm aware.
Yeah. But I think, totally. I think, right. And then like the in-person elements, like when I go to events and like people are like, oh yeah, I read XYZ thing. And like, this is really helpful. I'm like, I had no idea you were even on the newsletter. So it's those like signals I'm like, that's the more important piece to me right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the one deep dive has like 34 views on YouTube or something. And I'm like, darn it, like that is such a good video.
Yeah.
But then like people are like the 34, like that's 34 people still. So.
Yeah, it is. It is. So people can find you on LinkedIn, Matt Gira.
Yeah. Just find me there. And the Bootstrap report is jointhequarter.com/bootstrapped.
We'll put all those links all down below where you're watching this. And man, it's so great meeting you in person.
Yeah.
For real.
You have legs.
Yeah, you have legs. That's right. You're not just a head. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having me. This is always fun.
Awesome.